Unfiltered with Dave Latelli, episode 8. And today I had an amazing conversation with my good friend Willie Jackson. I've known Willie for a long time. You know, I never forget sitting down with Willie Jackson in the village in Māngere Bridge saying, I've got no money, can you help? You know, one thing that always stuck out about Willie, he helped me.
When you're in negotiations, be as unreasonable as possible. Give him some money.
Give him
This guy's a madman, you know?
This conversation was amazing, and I wanted people to know the person behind the politician. You know, growing up in Māngere, actually knowing my father when he was young, the advice he got from his uncles Sid and Moana Jackson, and also his mum, you know, Dame June, and what he thought about her getting her damehood. So I think you're going to really get a different perspective of Willie. I hope you do. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this out far and wide. Enjoy, team. Before we get started, Unfiltered with Dave Latelli is proudly part of the Acast network and produced by the amazing team at Fanaticals. This episode is brought to you by my good friends, Trust Motors. Now, they're an amazing company that support everything we do in the community. I've known them for a long time. So if you're looking for a new car, trading in your car, whatever the case may be sure to support those who support the community. Trust Motors, how car buying should be. Willie Jackson.
Kia ora.
Thank you for joining me, brother.
Kia ora, bro.
How you been?
Yeah, can't buy. Busy trying to get this rotten government out, you know. You spend every day sort of strategising to get them out. I'm just going down to Wellington. I've got a couple of things on with the party and with Māori, so, you know.
Oh, before we get stuck into how crap this government is, I want to go back to the start. It's funny because I was telling the boys, I do a lot of corporate speaking now.
Yeah.
It's how I earn money, speaking. And I always talk about, you know, I am apolitical. I'm apolitical. I think they're all shit. They've let us down multiple times. But we've always had a good relationship.
Yeah.
And, you know, I often tell a story about, you know, when I reached out to us, said, bro, we've got no money, no funding. We had our stuff that we do at Muma, and you really helped us to connect us to different places where we could, you know, keep going. So I'm always grateful to you, bro.
All good, bro.
Yeah.
All good.
And so we will get stuck into the government because I do believe this current government is totally against us anyway. Anyone struggling, you're in trouble, and anyone struggling in Brown, you're really up shit's creek. But we will go into that. But I just want to find a bit more about you. You know, and so born in Porirua.
Born in Wellington, brought up in Porirua.
Yeah. And you moved to Māngere when you were 10.
Moved to Māngere when I was 10. Yeah, South Auckland. Yeah.
And that's when you you're in that same area as my father, right?
Yeah. Well, I think me and your dad are about a year or two apart, and a lot of, you know, we're talking early 70s, you know, and the sort of Pacifica was just coming over too. You know, there was a high Māori population in South Auckland then, but it was a great time, you know, but it was tough times, and so it was always South Auckland upbringing, like Porirua upbringing. Those were tough upbringings, and I was lucky because my parents were very, you know, they were straight and all that sort of thing. And I'm not saying the old man wasn't straight, but once you get the wrong influence, you can be off. So I saw good mates. Dad wasn't your dad wasn't a great mate, or I just knew of your dad, got to know him later on, but you know, he was very different because he had the Samoan who was the boss of the mob, who were 95% Māori. And I think he was probably the boss of the mob because he was just about the best fighter in the mob. I think that's how he got there. But he was very different, eh? Yeah. And but I still loved Māngere and all that. I loved the community spirit. Dad was involved in the Māori community groups, you know. There was a lot of good things happening, but there was a lot of gangs, and it was a bit wild at the time too.
Yeah. And you went to Māngere College.
I went to Māngere College.
Dad went to. He said, I spoke to Dad last night. He said he went to Māngere College too, but not for very long.
No. He was too busy hooking up with the mob, I think. Yeah. But you know, Māngere College was really good when I was young. You know, it was. You know, we had there were a lot of good people who went to Māngere College. You know, they should celebrate some of those people. You know, people like Frank Bunce and, you know, All Black Frank Bunce, Betty Ann Monga, you know, Jimmy Dale, he's the head, Barbara Ala Latour, you know, there was a Jay Lagaya, you know, there's a lot
Yourself?
of... I suppose. And, you know, like there's a lot of talent that went through and against all odds in many ways did really, really well. And I think it was because of that strong community at the time too.
Yeah, and your mum was like quite high up in the parole board.
Mum was, Mum came
from...
And
an activist as well.
Well, but Mum came from the community. Mum was a cleaner.
Yeah.
So mum built herself up from being a cleaner.
That's what Dad was saying. She was always about the people.
About the people. And then mum came through and worked in the... she was just a self-made person, you know, got herself involved in the community, set up our marae, ngā whare wātia, then set up our muma and was on the parole board and just passionate about the community. And Dad was a wharfie, but also native Māori speaker who loved the community. And so they were part of that early Māori community in Māngere that set things up for our people.
Yeah, it's an amazing legacy they've left.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were great. They were great role models. But, you know, we needed leadership at the time. And so people came together, Māori community, particularly at that time, came together, and Dad worked with the local leaders and all that. They had the Māngere Māori Committee. And there were, in those days, a lot of gangs, you know, more visible, I thought, even though they say there's more today, but I don't see that same visibility as I did in those days, you know. And Dad and them used to facilitate a lot of the stuff, particularly with the mob and Black Power and all that.
What was Dad like back then?
Dad was a very humble man. I was very proud of him. He went to university at 40 and got himself a degree, and was a wharfie and did both. So he was a huge influence on me because of his humility, and I think that's what he always tried to instill in us. Is you can do good work, but make sure you remain humble. Mum was a sort of natural leader. I think she probably passed on a few qualities to me. I mean, she was pretty special. She ended up becoming a dame. Not that I'm a big celebrator of damehoods or knighthoods. I remember saying to her, do you have to be a dame? You know, why do we have to do this king's queen stuff? She said to me, you're part of the protest side of the party, of the family. I love the Queen, and I'll take my damehood. So, because my father's brothers were Sid and Willie Jackson, who was pretty famous in terms of protest and all that. They didn't like the king, the Queen, or anything like that. When Mum said, "Oh no, I love the Queen, and I'll take the honour, and you don't have to come."
Yeah. So you're not into the
I'm not.
stuff.
I've never really been into those sort of things. I've written about it for years. I like to see our own sort of celebrations, New Zealand celebrations. I think Alan Clark was onto it in many ways. However, I do understand people who get there. I mean, I understood why Mum did it, and a lot of friends have. But I think when you reject that, it shows that New Zealand can be independent, sovereign. You know, and that's where I would prefer to go. I was the Minister of Māori Affairs, and part of that job was, you had to go through the honours. And Jacinda Ardern said to me, now that you're the Minister of Māori Development, it's actually Māori Development, I need you to sit on the honours committee. I said, yeah, well, I'll sit on it. And if I sit on it, I'm going to try and get as many of our people through as possible. Because I know some of them really love it,
Yeah.
You know, so I was able to push through people to get honours who, and I won't say any of them because they know who they are, who would never have normally be honoured. One, I will talk about one because he's gone now, as our Kraua who was the last of the battalion.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the Kraua Gillies, and he was so special because he would not take the knighthood. Jacinda said to me, he's not going to take it. I went down to see him, and he said, oh, get away, boy, I don't need to talk to you. I said, Koro, you're the last of the battalion. Anyone who rubbishes you, Māoridom won't put up with it. And he said to me, I'm a nothing. I'm a nobody. I was just a private. We had all these heroes out there like Henare and Awatere. And I said, no, you're the last of the battalion. And I put to him that if you take it, then that honours all the soldiers who died. And so many Māori never got an opportunity with the battalion. There was they never got honoured. And he sort of had a tear in his eye, and then he took the knighthood. That's one of my best moments as an MP, to get that Kraua across the line with that knighthood. As I said, I don't agree with knighthoods, but I think it took on a different different perspective with this, because he was honouring our people and honouring the battalion. It was wonderful to see him get that knighthood in the end. Yeah.
I just want to talk first about you ended up getting into the unions.
Oh, yes.
From the meatworks, and what was that like back in those days? It would have been hearty.
It was tough, I was young, but it was all, I ended up doing that because it was a bit of bullying going on. I wouldn't put up with it. This bloke was wanting us to give him money every week, and he was a union representative. That's terrible, really. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And then, I'm about 18 or 19 and nearly get into a fight. But I stood up, and next minute, he got thrown out. I became the delegate, and that's how my union career was launched. And I did that for union representation work for over 20 years before I went into Parliament, from about 18 to about 38. Yeah, across a number of unions.
Our mutual friend Rob Campbell.
Yeah.
He was talking about those union days.
Yeah.
And it's back then you needed heavies with you, like when you're turning up on sites. One side's Black Power, the other side's Mongol Mob, and it's just full on.
It was a tough time, and so I ended up union president of our freezing works, and it was tough. You go out on strike, and if people worked and took your job, they were called scabs, right? Yeah. They get a hiding. That's how it worked in those days. I know it sounds horrifying, but that's how it was. The scabs go in and do your work. People find a way to deal with the scabs. That's how it was. No, I'm not advocating violence. It's just how it was. Because
like
people would want to protect their jobs, and so. Like Rob was saying, it was a tough time. And you talk about the gangs and all that. A lot of the gangsters and all that were the best unionists. I had a lot of them. Look, I had a number of them supporting me when I was in the union. So, like the tribesmen and all that, they all started around the time I took when I was a union boss, which was early 80s, you see. They were actually great union supporters, they could really bring it. So, they were tough days, but you used to have to front, and I learned a lot in terms of negotiating for people who never had much, who were always taken advantage of. And I'm very proud of my early years as a freezing workers official. I did seven years in the works, and then I worked with my Uncle Sid Jackson. Then I worked with Mark Gaucher and them in the Service Workers Union. It was a great background, but as Rob says, they were tough days, and you used to have to you'd have to front not just with your mouth sometimes, because when people are out on strike, it's high stress. People are not getting paid. We'd go on 5, 6, 7 week strikes, and if people would break those strikes, then there used to be consequences, And whether that was justified or not, I don't know. Sometimes I would be involved. Yeah. Sometimes I would not be involved. I just didn't want to know about it.
What was Rob Campbell like back in those union days?
Rob Campbell was one of the best. I always thought we all thought he was going to be. We thought he'd end up in Labour. Probably the boss of, like he was like the shining light, in terms of the unions. Of course, the career didn't continue down that track. He jumped fence, which I think shocked a lot of us, because he made a decision based on what was right for him, I suppose, and right for his family. But I remember at the time, being young at the time, I wasn't particularly impressed.
Yep.
I was very clear about, black and white. He wouldn't be surprised about that.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be surprised about, I just thought, like Rob, sold his soul.
Went corporate.
No, that's how I felt at the time. I've watched him in later years, and I quite admire a lot of his stuff. But he would have had his own views. But at that time, I didn't really know. We sort of knew of each other, but we weren't close or anything like that. But he was the shining light of the union movement. He was the one who had been basically everyone thought he was going to be the leader. He was one of the leaders anyway, but he was going to be the one and only leader, and the guy who would probably go to Labour, and the guy who they were talking about this guy being a future Prime Minister. So everyone was stunned when he went to the other side, and I just thought, oh well. That's what happens. People sell out. And that's how I saw it at the time.
Yeah.
And he won't be surprised with that. But he made a decision. But, for whatever reason, and he's had a successful career since. And in the last couple of years, he's made quite a contribution, I believe, with you and with our community, which I salute.
Yeah, I think he went to the dark side, or as you would say, he went corporate.
Yeah.
But then I think when we met, it's sort of he found the people again, and he started coming down to boot camps outside, boot camps at Waitea.
Yes. I was pretty good after you've made all your millions, and then you can come back and you can make a contribution. Good on you, Rob. He doesn't have to work again.
Yeah, he's a good mate of mine.
He won't like anything I'm saying, but he's a good man.
Yeah, he's a good man. Good. He's one of the only like yourself that I'll reach out to for advice.
Oh, you got brains plus strategy, got it all. In fact, he's a good writer too. I've been reading some of his stuff lately. So
yeah,
it's good that he came back 50 years later. Well done, Rob.
What's in terms of the gangs? How back in those days it was literally attack on sight. If you saw, my father would say, if you saw someone else with a different patch on, you had to stop. And if they didn't take it off, you had to attack them.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on with the patches, the ban on patches now?
Well, just back about what Dad was talking about, it was violent days. They were violent days. And for people like me, those of us who were brought up around the gang guys, there's no problem. Because they were our bros. We grew up with these guys, So we were never particularly fazed by gangs because how can you when you've been brought up with them, played rugby with them, played league with them? So I was there, but we'd watch them and we'd think, oh my goodness, they'd turn into just warriors, eh? And your dad was brought up amongst all that. But funny thing is, and then they could come and play footy with us, and it's just it was an incredible psyche, and it was. I think they're a product of our society that where Māori and Pacifica were not getting not getting enough support, and so you had these guys who gravitated away from things, and they found themselves within the gangs. They found a whanaungatanga within the mob or within the Black Power. I understood that because a number of them became bros to me. They were at school with us, and these are good guys. And so so I'm not like others who go, oh, they're this and that, because I'd seen what they've gone through. Martin Cooper, very close to me, on my board today. We've been mates since we were 16, 17. So the patch thing was no big deal to me. However, in terms of where the patches are today, I can see why people are intimidated. So you and I are not intimidated by it. It's no big deal. They're just the bros. However, I can see where people are intimidated. So on my marae, for instance, I always had a gang patch ban. I've always had one. There's never been a problem either, because the gangs come in because they need services. They take the patches off. It's all been good. So and I understand. I understand the angst from people who are not brought up around these guys, and I understand the fear. I know, and the Net's only doing this just to get votes. That's what it's all about. But I in terms of where we are today, I don't even know if the gangs are that bothered about it, to tell you the truth. Because someone was telling me yesterday, that we saw them all moving, and I think they were coming down the bridge for a cup of coffee, and they're good. They're all good down there too. I don't know which ones they are. But they don't cause no trouble with the people. But this cop was saying. Police person was saying actually to my wife, one of the problems now is we don't know who they are.
Yep, it's not going to reduce anything.
That's right.
It just reduces visibility.
But in terms of society and all that, I think if it eases society, it's all cool. The problem, though, is not really the patch, is it? It's what's happening behind the patch, Yeah,
I think like my father says about gangs. I mean, some guys, they're going to be gangster the day they die.
Yeah.
But you can help them become better club members, better fathers, better husbands, better community members, and change it from within, eh?
Well, your dad is a hero. Your dad is a hero. He is... because he's been, how many years did Dad do in jail? Between 7 and 10, didn't he? Or something like that?
Yeah,
a lot of years in jail. When you're a young man, in your 20s, that's a lot of years in jail.
He spent his 20s in jail.
That's and the great thing with him is that he reflected and he thought, right, I can change. What your father tells us is that anyone can change, because he was as hard edge as they come, and he was as tough as they come. Front anyone, and fight anyone. A warrior in every sense. But but that's in a physical sense. In a spiritual sense, he knew he was missing something. He knew he was missing something. So you can front and you can fight anyone and all that, but something was missing inside with the old man. He knew that, and he reflected on that, and he set up something that is fabulous today with his Grace Foundation. And anybody should get a knighthood. Your father should.
Yeah.
I don't think Dad would be into that sort of stuff, but you want to give a knighthood, give something to Dad who can work with anyone, not just gangs, anyone from any party, any time. And that's why I love the work of those sorts of people. Dad stands out, O'Reilly stands out, Eugene stands out, Martin Cooper stands. What am I going to dismiss these guys because they were gang guys? Cut it out. These are the guys who can make change. You stand out because of your learnings in life. You can bring those to the table and say, hey, I know what this is like.
Yeah. What was the biggest lesson you got from your uncle Moana Jackson?
He was. So the two of them, him and Uncle Sid, were two of the most influential Māori protest leaders of the last couple of generations. Uncle Sid was. I worked closely with Uncle Sid, and so I'll just talk about him first. His view was always, because he was a brilliant negotiator, so his view, he always said to me, Tauhinari, Tauhinari and I, we worked with Uncle Sid, and Uncle Sid always used to say, when you're in negotiations, be as unreasonable as possible. So he was telling me this in my early 20s. I said, you reckon? He goes, just be as unreasonable as possible and you'll get somewhere, So that was always something That's
good advice.
Yeah, that's good advice. Maybe I should, because you do that anyway, don't you? That's you anyway. Just be as unreasonable as possible, and then you'll get a result, because they'll think, oh, this guy's a nut, we're going to fight. And so when, as a union official...
That's so true.
Yeah.
Because early days, people would have thought this guy's going to go away. And then now it's like, fuck, can someone give him some money?
Give him some money.
Give him
this guy's a madman, Or they think they might get a smack in the ear or something. But that's how Uncle was. Now, this uncle of mine, Uncle Sid, was brilliant. You had the grease coming out of his ears. He was the leader of Ngā Tamatoa, which was the Māori protest movement. Hone Harawera and Tamaiti and all them, Donna Awatiri, they all followed him, you see. He was the boss. And my auntie Hannah, his wife, his first wife, she presented the Māori language petition. So I learnt so much off him, working with him and watching how he'd negotiate like that. And he'd be the most articulate person possible, but always prone to a bit of, he was a guy who could physically fight. He was a rugby, he'd fight. I was in a couple of fights with him, because that's how he was. He could break out into a punch up and he'd be in like a shot. Now and so I learned a lot off that uncle. Uncle Moana was different. Uncle was not there's nothing violent about Uncle. He was peaceful. And what I learned off him was watching him was the incredible calmness that he had, which Uncle Sid had too, but Uncle could go both ways, but like you. And I think I'm probably a little bit like that too. But I have never seen such a peaceful and articulate person as my Uncle Moana. And it used to drive me crazy, but almost tranquil. He's just never seen anything like the calmest, most articulate person I think I ever met.
What's one of the best advices that he's given you?
Well, always... keep your values and principles and know when to exercise them. And he was a big supporter, because some of these young ones now, they think they got all the answers and they don't realise that people like him, he said to me, and I was always proud of that he would say to me, and Uncle Sid would, that we support you 100%. We don't, of course, we don't work within the system. We work outside the system, but we need people in the system. And you're a good person for that, because you know all about racism. And we've got to have people within the system, but always know when to exercise your principles and values, and you'll know that time. And Uncle Moana always said that. So, I know I know how hard it is sometimes within the system because, and you do too, because, you have to compromise. That's hard. That's hard sometimes.
That's what I was going to ask. People always say to me to go into politics. But how hard is it for you as someone from the community, for our people, how hard is it to keep to that advice that, your Uncle Moana gave you?
Yeah. It can be hard sometimes because you have to have, I always say to people and other Māori who come in, you got to have a line sometimes. Tariana Turia had that line, remember? Back in 2004 with Foreshore and Seabed. So when does that line come in terms of your people? And it's a tricky one. Kiritapu Allen struggled with that, particularly when she was Justice Minister.
Yeah.
I love Kiritapu, she was very close to me. She's doing her own thing these days, but she's been she's a terrific young advocate, and she was brilliant. But she struggled with compromises of being a justice minister because you have to bring out stuff there, particularly when you have these kids, they're doing their thing in terms of robbing dairies and all that sort of stuff. Then you got to bring out laws, and then you ask yourself, God, am I going to bring out a law where 10 or 12-year-olds get arrested? Have I crossed that line? So I have always thought to myself, well, enough is enough. And so sometimes I've come across, I've hit those sort of no-go zones, and how I've dealt with it is that I'm very clear to the people who I've worked with that this is a no-go zone for me. And I'm, if you shut your mouth, then you do yourself a disservice. You don't have to go out publicly and do everything, but if you let people, particularly if you want to keep using the system, because sometimes when you're using the system, a lot of times when you're using the system, Dave, you have to swallow rats. You just have to swallow rats. And if you just leave, then you won't get through that funding you should get for Māori or for Pacifica. Or you won't get through, because if you go, then who's going to do your job? It's one of the reasons why I've stayed in there, you got to think, well, hang on, am I going to pass this on to my bro to do the work, the next in line? I've got Willow Jean and Penny Henare. They work with me, both great. But would I put that responsibility of our South Auckland community on them? Would I, when I'm the person who's been there? So sometimes you have to swallow rats, and some of these younger crew coming through, because you've got a young Māori Party staunch crew coming through, and look, I understand where they're coming from. There's no compromise, eh? There's no line.
Obviously, I'm friends with them just as I'm friends with you.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on what's going on with them?
There's they represent the young, and they're a bit wild. I understand all that. They're a bit. There is no compromise. We will take the country. You hear it, eh? And I in one sense admire a lot of them. In another sense, there's some naivety there in terms of where things are at. They'll get angry with me when I say, don't talk nonsense to me about a separate Māori parliament. And I said, we've got to get justice within the system, eh? They have this view that all of a sudden, that they can turn society over and Māori can take over. That can't happen. It won't happen. There's just not enough of us. And the other side of it is half of our people, 50% of our people, for instance, are not on the Māori roll. Yeah. And 50% of our people, more than that, don't come to the maraes, don't know that. You look at your own journeys. A lot of people come to their whakapapa and their taha Māori side late. How many Māori out there are like that? Well, there's thousands, literally. Doesn't make them any less Māori, but you got thousands of Māori to turn around before you think you're going to have this utopia tino rangatiratanga nation. And so I don't waste my time going down that track. I don't want to be disrespectful to those young ones because I know that's what they want. But it's you got to get what you can from these governments within the system, And the Te Pāti Māori, look, they're on a roll, I give it to them. Rawiri and Deb and, but, and I got a good relationship with them and we'll continue to. But, you got to get real too, because if we don't strategize and use the system, we'll have this other side in forever and a day. You know, so we got to work with working class Pākehā who are our mates too. You know, who also are having a hard time because the minimum wage is not going up. They're not getting proper wages and all that. We got to know how to coordinate and work with Pākehā people and with ethnic minorities. And I know that's tough because for some of these younger ones, but they got to understand strategy and politics if we want to get back there. Now, I know that they get hoha, they get a bit irritated with us sometimes because we have to compromise, but we want to get back into government.
Yeah, one of the things I always talk about is when I talk about my people. Obviously I'm Māori Samoan, but when I talk about my people, I mean people, anyone struggling. You know, that's who we represent. Anyone down at the bottom.
Exactly.
You know, poverty.
And that's why you and I will always get, who are your people? And they go, my people. Absolutely. Because it's an economic thing, bro. It's not just about, as much as I love Māori, I love my own people, and I love, I'm just so proud of Māori. To just think that it's just about Māori is not the way forward, because a lot of people are struggling. And if we just isolate ourselves and try and just do policies for ourselves, we ain't going to move the people with. A lot of good Pākehā people, working class people. And I think that's the problem with if you watch what's happening with Te Pāti Māori, don't get me wrong, they got good support at the moment, at least between 5 and 6%, which is good. But more and more people are saying they're separatists. You know, you hear the Ghanas and them always going after them all the time. I don't think they are, but I don't think they help themselves sometimes. You know, with anyone who might have a different view, you know, you got to take people with you, you know, and so. But my mate JT is, he's been the leader. He's the leader. He's been the president. Yeah. So
on JT, I mean, you guys have been friends for a long time. I mean, you guys set up Whānau Order. What's your thoughts on the Whānau Order? You know, cutting everything.
I'm very sad about it. I'm very sad about it because it was it was so successful. You know, the Waipareta overseeing this has been incredibly successful. We have all our organisations been involved. My own organisation, Mumo, run by my wife, Tania Rangihiwe, been incredibly important what they're doing at the coalface. So I worry about it going forward. I'm under no illusions that it's an attack on JT.
It's definitely a personal thing.
Yeah. No, like you can, I've been around too long. I know they're saying that. It's not. Oh no, it's got nothing. It's got everything to do with JT. You know, I'm no fool. I've been in this game a long, long time, and because how else could they lose the contract? Because they were doing so. You know, like they passed every audit. They passed that with flying colours. You know, every KPI, huge success. So if you're successful at any and every level, then it must be because of something else. And he's got such a strong, high profile. He's such a strong leader. Whether he should be the president and the boss of the Whānau Order Commissioning Agency, well, that's another kōrero, that's another debate. But I'm not going to go down that track. But I am very clear. Tama Pōtaka might not admit it, but I'm no fool. You know, it's all because of John. They've done it. Winston has announced it in the House, for goodness sake. You know, he's denounced John. He's denounced Waipareta. He's made it very clear they're not getting the contract. Is that fair? You know, I don't think so. I think that the work they've done and whether John's the president or the boss of the Whānau Order Commissioning Agencies, you've got to put that to the side. Has the job been done? Yes. Have they passed every audit? Yes. Should they have won the contract? Absolutely yes.
Especially if this government's talking about outcomes all the time.
That's right.
You know. So, bro, what was it like working for Jacinda?
For me, it was an honour. You got to remember, I wasn't the most popular person coming into the Labour Party. You know, Jacinda was no supporter of mine when I first started, and I understood that. Because you know the backup from Roastbusters wasn't good. You know, when I came into the Labour Party, it was Andrew Little's idea, but Andrew forgot to talk to some of the key people like Jacinda and Grant and Chippy. You know, so they were not particularly, I mean, they didn't come out publicly against me, but I knew that there was a number of them who were against me. Heck, on the first day that I confirmed as joining the party, we did a press conference in Waitangi in February 2017. I thought it all went well, and Matt McCartan pulled me to the side and he said, "Oh, Willie, we just got a small problem." And I says, "What would that be, Matt?" And he goes, "There's just a few people against you. There's a petition. 400 of them have signed it." So this was in February 2017. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's more than a small problem. So initially, she never, she was not. She never said anything to me, but I heard that a number of them were not supporters. What I said when she took over leadership is I just fronted her and I said, just give me an opportunity.
Yeah.
If you want me to go, I just said to her right from the start, because I got brought in by Andrew Little and then she took over the leadership, then I'll go. I'll just go. She said, no, you're in. You run your Māori campaign and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I said, just judge me on my work. But if you want me to go now, I'll go. And she said, no. Do the business. So I ran the Māori campaign. It went fantastic. And then she said to me at the end of it, "Oh, you've done a really good job. I want you to be a minister with me." So, and so that was to her credit, because it was against her maybe better judgment or some of her mates around her. But I just said, judge me on my work. I'm a person who, yes, I came in with Andrew, but I'm a person who wants to be part of a team. I see enough in this Labour team to support. I like guys like Andrew Little and Chippy and Grant Robinson, Carmel Sepuloni, and to her credit, she made me a minister, and it was a wonderful like 4 or 5 years with her. I think I had as a minister, and I thought she was someone special, a woman with a lot of aroha. I think we were lucky to have her. I don't like all this hatred against her, Dave. You see these clowns out there who like to threaten her, and like she's got I don't know if you know, but she has to have a full-time bodyguard all the time.
Jeez.
Yeah, full-time bodyguards, because these guys will have a crack at her. No, so it's like 24-hour bodyguard, because and she deserves that. But she's on her own. They might just take her out. That's how bad some of these nuts are. And you see them. But I had never seen a Pākehā political leader like that, so committed to kaupapa Māori, so interested in kaupapa Māori, and that's why I think we were able to advance so many initiatives over the time that she was a Prime Minister. Matariki, matatini funding, whānau order.
And then now it seems like this government, I mean, they're just ripping all that apart.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's what they are. They're attacking everything Māori, everything in terms of working class people. They're cutting back all the funding and resourcing for our people and for ethnic communities and for disabled communities, right across the board. It's like you're looking at this and you're thinking, yeah, okay, we know you have to save money, but do you have to keep attacking our groups, our people, as you said, our people?
How much of it is coming from Seymour as opposed to would you rather just national there instead of national and NZ First?
Seymour drives a heck of a lot of it, a hell of a lot of it. You see, you've got to remember, it seems extreme. I think, it's not just Seymour though, but National's part of this too, because they've bought into this. But you can see the way that Seymour constantly attacks Māori things. It's a real frustration. Just the other day he was talking about, spaces at university for Māori and making a big deal about it all the time. I really get sick of it. So you get that from him, you get that from, sadly, from Winston and Shane, and who should know better, because I'm not sure. Do you know them? Have you met Winston and Shane? You sort of met them.
I've met Winston a few times.
Yeah.
What's wrong with those guys?
So you haven't met Shane?
No.
No, you haven't met Shane. Well, because you would have met Winston, and Winston's very likeable.
Yeah.
Very you're thinking, oh, geez, he got a lovely manner about him. But I think with them, they're always playing the game. You wonder sometimes if they really believe in it, because they've been at different times big supporters of Māori things. I mean, Shane worked with me in terms of employment and.
Yeah, well, I heard Shane on your ex-wife's show, and he talked about that Māori ceded sovereignty.
I know.
And is he doing it? Is he doing it for clickbait, or they believe in this stuff?
It's hard to believe, eh? It's hard to believe someone who's so educated, so articulate, can come up with such nonsense. And I think he's doing it to keep those sort of voters who support New Zealand first in check, you know. And so, because in a taha Māori sense, he's an expert. You know, this guy's a beautiful Māori speaker, you know. And so I don't think at all he believes half the things, well, some of the things he's saying. I think it's said on purpose to provoke. And also, you know, the Māori Party is a good sort of nemesis for the Māori, you know, like cause they sort of stand up to the Māori Party, you know, they have their scraps with the Māori Party. So I don't think Shane believes a lot of that stuff. Winston is, you know, he's a consummate politician. Just talks absolute nonsense sometimes, but he's also a person who's worked with us well in the past, you know, worked well with Jacinda, so that's politics for you. But Seymour's a strange cat, you know, I mean, soon to be Deputy Prime Minister, you know.
That's crazy, eh?
It's unbelievable, isn't it? You know, we can sort of handle Winston as the Deputy Prime Minister. It seems right. I mean, Winston's going to be 80 in a few weeks, you know. But Seymour, you know, this guy who keeps attacking our communities, you know, just about make you want to go into politics, wouldn't it, Dave?
Well, I keep getting asked about going into politics? Am I going to, but, you know, even talking to you, I've talked to you many times about it. That, you know, what's your advice?
Oh, I think that you're better suited to the community, if I'm being honest. Could you do the business in politics? Well, yes, you could, because you're a strong advocate. But I think a fellow like you might get bored. No, because it can be restrictive. It can be limited. So at the moment you're the boss of everything. You know, you do whatever you like. You can't actually do that in politics. Particularly someone like you, because you know the media will always be looking for you to make a mistake.
Yeah, I probably am. I mean, I'd imagine me down there, and then I'm in the news for Butterbean beats up David Seymour. That'd be funny.
No, but you're probably able to jump across the table and crack him one, you know? I mean, look at Rawiri Waititi. He's in trouble for talking about his lawns, giving his lawns a hiding, you know? You wouldn't go that far. You would just say, no, I'll give him a hiding. That's what you would say. You wouldn't be talking about lawns. You'd say, no, you just deserve a good hiding, you know?
But the only thing that why it makes me think about it is, you know, maybe later on when I'm older and a bit more calmer. Yeah. But it's like, how much change can community activists really make?
Yeah, I think you can get the changes, you know, like, you know, when I came back in, I never thought, Dave, that we would get a national Māori holiday. You know, not in my lifetime. We got Matariki and that New Zealanders celebrate. I never thought that we could get, you know, we got Matatini funding from less than 2 million to 17 million a year. Incredible. We got whānau order at rates that you never believe. I mean, we used to get, just for example, in terms of targeted funding, making it simple for you, we used to get less than 100 million a year, 80 million a year. We were able to get that up to 1 billion a year. It's incredible, you know. So yes, you know, and was able to get that because got into positions with the Māori caucus, and we were able to negotiate those things. So I mean, those were things that we only ever dreamed of. Was able to get people across as knights and dames who never would have been recognised. Was able to get judges in who were not recognised before from the previous government. You know, those are chances of a lifetime. That's why I went into Parliament, and I think that you know, just to have seen so much of that over the years makes me proud.
That's amazing, man. I think maybe I've got to be better at work. It's funny because I remember talking to JT one time, and he goes, bro, stop burning bridges. Well, that's coming from JT.
They're coming from JT.
And I said, wow, geez, I must be. And maybe I have, I mean, I've had a tendency to I mean, I've pissed off both sides. So maybe that.
Well, but here's the thing, bro. So have I. You know, like as I said, like, you know, I made a decision to come into politics. And I had a history of attacking. I used to hammer Labour particularly over foreshore and seabed, which some of the activists said, he's attacked us. And that was true. And I says, I can't take that back. But what I will say is that parties change and leaders change, and there was no Jacinda Ardern at around foreshore and seabed in 2004. There was, Andrew Little wasn't there. All I'll say is that I've had a crack at all the parties. Heck, I remember being a guest of the Māori Party. I was their only guest speaker in 2004, 2005, and I hammered them, And Turudo was, because I didn't like them wanting to do a deal with National. Yeah, and Tuddy was hoha with me. I said, I don't know how you can do a deal with these guys after the way they just brashed and them just rubbished us. And then in 2008, they did a deal with the National Party. And I have to admit, I supported that in 2000. See, times change.
Yeah.
Key came on. Key was very clever. He thought, unlike this stupid mob, Key thought, I'm going to work with Māori, And between 2008 and 17, he had a relationship with Māori that was pretty special, you see, because he valued the treaty, he valued the principles, all that sort of stuff. And so whilst you've hammered both sides, that should never take you out of calculations. That's what I'm saying, because you're still going to work with a group who will advance things, eh?
Yeah.
And as Māori, we don't have any choice, or Pacifica, we have to work with whoever the government is. So if you've got a relationship now with one of the ministers and all that, I congratulate you, and I say you go ahead and do that, because it's not about what support you can get for Labour, even though you're a natural Labour person or Māori Party person. First and foremost, it's about your community.
So just in finishing, bro, in terms of you talked about the team, with the Labour team, what's your plans to try and get back in government? Is it a new leader? What is it?
Well, one thing is for sure, it's not a new leader. We've got the leader. Chris Hipkins, I think, is perfect in terms of being the next Prime Minister, because he's been a Prime Minister and he's still young. But more than that, he's a hell of an advocate for all people in this country. In terms of Māori, you never had a leader of a major party who conceded that Māori did not concede sovereignty, lose the tino rangatiratanga. That's huge in itself. But not just in terms of Māori. I think he's a great leader in terms of all our communities, and I'm really proud of where he's at now, given that a number of people had said, when we lost the election, he's got to go. That's not the case. He's never looked better and never looked stronger. I think we've got a great team. A team a number of us, I suppose, who've been former ministers who are on the ground doing the business. Carmel Sepuloni, great deputy. And I'm really proud of the team, We've got a great front bench, but proud of our Māori caucus that has to stand up. Penny Hinari's doing the business. Willow Jean Prime is she's just a fabulous advocate.
So what's one thing you're going to do better than this one to try and get back in? Because we need you guys back in.
We're gonna get support get the support back for our communities who've lost support. It's pretty simple. You look at what's happened with disabled people. It's terrible the way their rights have been taken out. The disabled community, Pacifica, Māori communities, but we also have to be. We have to be advocates, That's what I'm saying. Our Māori caucus is sort of up against the Te Pāti Māori, but that's okay, because as I said, we've got Willow, we've got Penny, we've got Shannon, we've got Kushla Tangaire overseas. We've got some really strong Māori advocates. Arena Williams in Manurewa, there's a lot of them.
I think that was the thing last time from our perspective. It lost the connection to the community.
That's right.
Of the people.
Right.
Yeah, so I think if you win that back, it'll.
The communities felt a little bit deserted, if we're being honest, because what I keep saying is you got to look after our community in the supermarket and at the petrol 100%. Pump. And if they look at they're looking at their FPOS and they're thinking, oh my God, look at where the petrol was at. We made mistakes in those areas. We didn't do enough in the supermarkets. We should have taken GST probably off meat and all that sort of stuff. Look after our people at the coalface, and that support will come back. I think it's coming back. I know it's coming back. We're seeing that. And we'll be putting some strong policies in place over the next 18 months to ensure that support and to continue that support.
Awesome, bro. Just there. If you guys just do that, that'll be massive. Just in finishing, brother, I always ask, guests that come on, what's your why? What's your purpose?
To serve our people, to serve the people. That's always been my why. Is that I want to, you sort of want to help the underdog. The person who can't stand up for themselves. I've always done that. That's always been my why. Is I hate seeing anyone being bullied, intimidated, and it was always my why as a union official. It's been my why in terms of the community, and it's my why in government to stand up for people who need support, who always are looking for support, and it's a great privilege. And I'm humbled by a lot of the support I get, and humbled to represent our people in all our communities.
Thank you for joining me, brother.
Kia ora, bro.
It's a great why. It's our why as well. And maybe if I ever start the BBM political party, you might come over and join me. I'll make you a minister.
Make me a minister. I'll be your deputy.
Yeah, deputy. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man.
Kia ora,
awesome. Kia ora. If you made it this far, thank you so much for the support. It really does mean so much to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and comment on our videos, and share this out. These stories are so inspiring, and they need to be heard by everyone. Thank you so much, team.